My next guest has spent a career improving the lives of veterans and others with physical disabilities. He's overseen development of vastly improved wheelchairs and prosthetic devices. Now he's an inductee to the Inventors Hall of Fame. I spoke at length with VA Senior Research Career Scientist and Paralympian himself, Rory Cooper. He also directs the Human Engineering Research Laboratories, a joint VA and University of Pittsburgh effort. Here's an excerpt.
Academia has a constant influx of new people and young people. And, one thing about students is they're like bees. They're pollinators. They take classes from different professors and different departments, sometimes in different colleges or schools. We love to bring interns into our lab to expose them both to research and rehabilitation engineering and assistive technology, as well as to the VA, and learning that the federal government does have inventors and innovators and some amazing researchers and scientists. And they also bring their perspective, because they're not just coming from our affiliate university or our local universities, but they bring national and sometimes even a global perspective. And that keeps me on my toes, keeps the other engineers and scientists here engaged. That's a really important part of what makes us successful. Then the other thing that's important is we are very focused on participatory action design, engineering, and research, which means engaging with our veterans, our Americans with disabilities, our caregivers and family members, and as well as our healthcare providers, so that we are working on their problems. So, we're a very mission-driven organization, more so than being an intellectual curiosity-driven organization.
And we talked about bringing, new technology developments into the assistive area. But it also strikes me that many of the items and many of the capabilities developed in the assistive field actually have greater application for everyone. Just trivial example, every time I open a PDF, I hit that plus button so I can read the darn thing. And this started out as an enlargement capability, was for 508 or for assistive technology, but millions more people can benefit from a lot of these things. Maybe instead of making the wheelchair seat more like an airline seat, it's possible they could improve airline seats to be more like a wheelchair seat.
There's no question. You mentioned AI earlier. The early AI was the people with disabilities with the early AI adopters. Word prediction, sentence prediction, all that was all first targeted at helping people with disabilities, especially who use like alternative or augmentative communication devices for computers or computer access or for speech. That technology was originally, they were the first adopters. That AI got to people we used AI first. It's becoming generative AI, which the early forms of generative AI is being, as people see it as a revolution, but some of us have been working with it for 30 years. There's other things that not as sophisticated. Text-to-speech is another one that was originally in speech-to-text that was also originally generated for people with disabilities and has become a mainstream tool. Texting, for that matter, right? It's also an accessibility feature that has become widely used. Actually, the ability on your computer to enlarge the windows, right? And do that was also enlarging the text, changing the color of the text. All of that was originally accessibility features. And there are things like automatic door openers, curb cuts, wider doors. Those are all accessibility features. I tell people, there's probably more delivery people use curb cuts than wheelchair users. For that matter, probably more strollers use curb cuts than wheelchair users. So we all benefit, and that's the advantage when you think about the broader perspective. But even if it's something as specialized as a wheelchair, not many people use wheelchairs that don't need them or don't require one. But the technology that's developed for wheelchairs, understanding the ergonomics, understanding better user interfaces, they spin out to other things. We worked very early on what's called a zero-throw joystick, but those are used in other applications as well now, from heavy equipment operation as well as to even computer access. So in universal design, you think of if you catch the tail ends, in other words, the super high performers. The example of that's one of the reasons the automotive industry invests in Formula One and NASCAR and Indy racing and all of that is a lot of that technology that eventually trickles down into your regular car, such as, disc brakes, ABS braking, power steering, all of those sorts of things, right? Even now heads-up displays and emergency warnings.
Yeah, that's what Henry Ford II said, that race them on Sunday and then sell them on Monday.
Yeah, so that's one scale. And then if you go to the other tail end, people who are very severely impaired and they've developed technology that they can use and that benefits their inclusion in society and their participation in society, that benefits the middle as well. So you kind of squeeze from both ends, right? You take sort of the superhuman athletes and the technology and those types of sports, and then they translate into everyday use. And then you take things on the other end, people that are on the other end of the bell curve. If you can include them, that also helps everybody.
And a final question, you work in the area of assistive technologies. There's also rehabilitative technologies. Maybe just define the difference between those terms and how they also relate.
So assistive technologies are typically those technologies used out in your home and community, and they use them kind of long term. Rehabilitative technologies are usually most in the hospital, clinic, or can be used actually extended in the home, but they're to improve. Rehabilitative technologies are to help improve your function and reduce impairment, whereas assistive technologies are to augment that function.
But they kind of interrelate, strengthen one another.
They certainly interrelate, right? But you can think of a rehabilitative technology, for example, as an arm ergometer, right? So like a bicycle you pedal, which helps gain strength and physical stamina. But you might actually use a hand cycle to do the same thing, which becomes a sports and recreation device. So there's certainly some overlap there. And essentially want to kind of go hand in hand, right? You want to sort of maintain or improve function as you can, right? And then at the same time, augment function where you need to as well.
And being a Paralympian yourself, have you also discovered better ways of rehabilitation training for people that have these disabilities, whether they're quadriplegic or paraplegic? The rehabilitative techniques, have those improved also?
Well, first, from what I was injured in today, the big change is we kind of transitioned to a survival model to a sports medicine model. So helping people to achieve as much function as they desire, right? And to have them set goals and we work towards those goals rather than the let's just get you so you can take care of yourself and go home, right? So it's literally set higher goals, and so that's been the big change from an attitude perspective. A little bit of the downside is that at least in the private sector, the length of stay of rehab has gotten so short that a lot of the rehab has transitioned from actually learning how to do it to how to learn further. So you wind up responsible for doing a lot of your own rehab once you get out of the rehab setting.
And do you also keep track of developments in the ultimate rehabilitation, which would be spinal repair?
So look, we also follow regenerative medicine, right? That's in general, could be spinal repair, it could be limb salvage improvement or growing new limbs eventually. Or new organs. People certainly want to look at that. My philosophy has been, after 40 years of experience, is that we've seen new disabilities, so conditions that were fatal or didn't exist at all become chronic conditions. Polytrauma was one of them, right? That came really out of post 9/11 era. Multiple sclerosis. People are living typically much longer with multiple sclerosis than they did 40 years ago. Even diabetes, as people live well with diabetes. There's been great technologies for epilepsy and even spinal cord injury. I have lived longer today than the World War II veterans, who were the first spinal cord injury survivors, had lived when I became injured.
Dr. Rory Cooper, Senior Research Scientist at the Veterans Health Administration and founder of the Human Engineering Research Laboratories. There's much more to the interview. We'll post it in its entirety, along with a link to more information at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.